Hi, I'm John Everts from California Leasing, and this is This Week in Santa Clarita Real Estate. I am very excited because we have Felicia Grady here today, and she is an incredible realtor. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Thank you for taking some time on one of our sunny days. We don't get many of those anymore, but we got one today.
We'll get plenty.
They're coming.
Yeah, they're on the way.
So I'm excited because today we get to kind of geek out a little bit, get into some technical stuff on a real estate sale. So I have a question for you for someone who's serious about selling their house. The market's heating up again. We're starting to see multiple offers again. Mm-hmm. So how does a seller decide if they get 4 offers on their house in the first weekend? What are they looking at? What kind of information do they need to make a decision?
Oh, it's not more than just the price. In fact, I just did one this past week and we had 12 offers. And the seller's like,
12 offers.
12. We had 12 offers. And only 2 of them were low, but they were investors. All the rest were buyers. And they were all at asking price and higher on this one. And it's just a basic home. But here's the thing. So he's like, well, what do I do? Because someone would have a really crazy high price. But if you look at all sorts of things, like you start with the financing. Okay, are they getting does their pre-qualification letter from the lender, does it justify that price? And they have to show their proof of funds. Can they afford it? Can they afford it if the appraisal were to come in low for any reason? Because you never know if the appraiser's having a bad day.
Yeah.
And then
or if they just offered over, what it would appraise for. What do you do with that gap?
Right. So you have to look at their proof of funds, make sure the name on there matches the buyer's name.
That's a good idea.
We had one that didn't. Yeah, that can happen. And the same thing with the pre-approval letter. Of course, it says pre-approving, Joe and Mary, but it's Sue and Kevin who are buying. Like, what's going on? So you have to check those, make sure it's current, not from like 1981 or something like that. So you make sure they have enough money. So you have to see if they can cover a gap between the appraised price and the offer price.
They offer $800, it appraises for $780. They have to just come in with $20,000 cash to cover that spread.
Yeah, but that's not automatic. That would have to be on a counter offer. And you have to make sure they want to do that. If they don't want to do that, you might want to look at a different offer. But you're going to judge them. You're going to be looking at the financing, the kind of financing, which is too much to go into all of that right now. How bad do they want the house? Is this a third-party investor, like a wholesaler? They want to buy it and then sell it to someone else while it's still in escrow with yours, but they can back out any time. Does their mother live next door and they really want to be next to mom? That's probably a more motivated
are they?
buyer. Okay. What you want is the highest buyer who will stay in escrow and close escrow. That's the whole thing. Because
are you seeing, like in this market where we're seeing multiple offers, are you seeing people be really aggressive with their offer to try to get it accepted and then kind of backpedaling after they get into escrow?
Yeah, we see that too.
That's got to be so frustrating for the seller.
Yeah, well, you have to shorten the contingency periods for them backing out, changing their mind, doing things like if they say, well, they want 17 days, which is, as you know, the default time period for them to remove an to remove an inspection contingency. You're going to shorten that so that they just get it done, and if they don't want the house, and if they're going to back out, which they can due to a hangnail or anything.
At the beginning,
you want it to be sooner rather than later for the seller's sake and for the buyer's sake.
So we just hit a bunch of really technical terms in there. And it's something that maybe we can take for granted because we're in the industry.
Okay, like contingency, for example.
Yeah, what the heck is a contingency?
Those are ways to back out.
Okay.
That's like, like you say, the offer might say, they have a 10-day inspection contingency. That means when the 10th day comes after the acceptance date, at that point they need to remove that, that back out clause. And then they're going to go forward. And if they back out later because of something else, it can't be because of the inspection, because they've removed that particular contingency.
And eventually they're all removed.
Yes, like a contingency for insurance.
That's a big one right now.
Yeah, especially if the house is in a fire area or something the maps think is a fire area.
Right.
The buyer needs to go check all of these things, and the sooner the better, because once they remove the contingency, they may be able to back out for something else, but not for that.
It's interesting you brought up insurance. I just talked to a friend of mine who's an agent, and she said, right now I'm telling my clients, is the second your offer is accepted, you need to get a hold of me to make sure we can get insurance, because that can be a nasty surprise.
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot that goes into this thing called selling the house, huh?
Yes, there's
Yeah,
a lot.
man, a lot.
And my seller, he said, this is just today, I was over there going over some of the paperwork. He says, I thought you guys had an easy job.
Right. That's
You
what
know,
everybody thinks. We
he's-
just golf and go out to lunch, right?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
karaoke.
And karaoke, yes. But he said, I didn't realize how much you guys actually had
Oh,
to
yeah.
do. It's like, yeah. And then there's even more than we're talking about here, but as far as getting multiple offers, the neat thing about if you have multiple offers, you don't send just a regular counter offer to the buyer to see if you want to make any changes, like maybe you want to shorten time periods or take out different reports and things. You can send a seller multiple counter offer. It's a different form. And you want that form because if you send that to the different buyers, and they can be different to each person. Like one person you want more deposit, another one you
Okay,
want
so
a
it
shorter
can be a
escrow
different
period.
counter. It just
Yeah.
has to go out in the same time frame?
Yeah, well, yeah,
Okay.
you want them out in the same time frame so that they come back. And that way, if all the buyers agree to your counter offer, you don't have to go, oh my gosh, I've got 3 people who are going to be living in this house at the same time we bought it, and I'm going to get out of the country because that was like fraud. So it's nice because that if they all sign the counter, the multiple counter, it's good.
It doesn't
because then
tie
it comes
you.
back exactly.
Okay.
It comes back to the seller, and then he could say, okay, well, this one signed it, this one signed it, this one made a counter offer back, and maybe he likes that one better. So the seller, he or she, so that way they get to decide on the final line who they're going to give the house to, and they may want to have the others as backup if they like those ones.
I mean,
too.
can you end up going back and forth more than once?
Oh yeah, you could keep going back and forth forever. But the longer you go back and forth, the buyer can still go out and look at other homes,
Right.
which the seller might
And
not
make
like.
offers on other
And
homes.
yeah, and then the seller might get other offers, which they might like or they might not like, depending on how things are going. So you don't really want to go back and forth a billion times, but there's no law that says you can't.
Right.
I'm trying to think.
Okay.
The most I've had is probably 6, but it's usually the seller does a counter and the buyer either accepts it or does a counter.
Okay.
That's what I see most of the time.
But sometimes you're just coming back and forth to find this middle ground.
Yeah, and sometimes
Okay.
it's not always even price.
Right.
You know, it could be different things.
Well, like you hit on contingency time
Yeah.
frame. So if somebody came in with a way over asking price offer and you're like, and you counter and say, that's fine, but we want contingencies removed by this number of days instead of this number of days.
Yeah, or a buyer might come back and say, they really want the house, so they're going to let the seller stay there for free for a certain period of days or
Yeah.
something. For example, afterward, they might do things to kind of sweeten the pot without increasing the price.
So I think from everything that you just told us, in a seller's market, even though you could put your house on, Facebook and maybe sell it, it's probably better to have a professional who understands all of this stuff in order to get the most that you can out of your house and the best terms and conditions too of the sale.
Yes, because even after the contract is signed and the buyer does an inspection, they might come back with a request. With a list of repairs, even if the seller said in the counter offer, we're selling it
We're
as
not
there's no
gonna-
repairs.
yeah.
There's nothing that doesn't let them ask.
Yeah, right.
Right? They're still
Right.
allowed to do their inspection, which we want them to do.
Yep.
We want them to do that. But no one said they couldn't ask. Sometimes it gets people angry. But
Right.
there's no, okay. So they may come back and they might say, hey, no one knew the heater was broken. In which case, they're not going to be able to get a loan if
Right.
there's no heater. Because that's,
Well, yeah,
that's a
and if you're
health
talking
code.
about an FHA loan or a
Right.
VA loan, it gets even stickier.
So yeah, so at that point you're going to need to be negotiating, and there's often a lot of negotiating that goes on at that point after the inspection.